Hello from the Oklahoma Summit on Access to Justice in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I'm John Williams, the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Bar Association, and I'm your host today. And with me, I'm going to ask him to introduce himself, our guest.
Mike Turpin. John, good to be here, and I'm a big believer and a big fan of the Legal Talk Network. Hear me now, believe me later. Are you with me, brother?
And we're on the road with Legal Talk Network.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're back. Thank you so much for joining us on the road. It's a pleasure to be here in Oklahoma City with Mike Turpin, and we're talking about access to justice. Before we get there, Mike, tell our listeners just a little bit about who you are. And
I started off as a child, and actually I grew up in Tulsa, and I ended up over in Muskogee, Oklahoma, as you know, as district attorney in Muskogee County. And I won a lot of big cases, and I lost a lot of big cases. I learned a lot along the way, but I decided at some point in time, it's time for Turpin. It's Turpin time. And I ran for Attorney General of the state of Oklahoma. And as you may remember, John, and you helped me, it's your fault. I won. I became Attorney General. And everybody says, Turpin time, that's a stupid slogan. I said, who cares? I'm Attorney General of the state of Oklahoma. And as you know, then I ran for governor, and Turpin time was over. So, ever since then, I've been practicing law for the last 30 years. With Riggs, Abney, Neal, Turpin, Orbison, and Lewis, I'm a big supporter of this conference, Access to Justice. I'm a big supporter of the Oklahoma Bar Association. And most importantly, I'm a big supporter of John Williams. You do a great job for the Oklahoma Bar Association. I mean that sincerely. I can be silly, but I'm being serious now.
You're a great friend, and my admiration for you has to go with a lifetime of service that you've provided. Today, you talked about civil Gideon. What did you tell these folks today? I'm
obsessed with the whole idea of civil Gideon. And I know the whole world's looking at it. I know the whole country's looking at it. But we did so much for our society, our civilization, so much, for the least fortunate, for the folks I call on the downside of privilege. And with Gideon versus Wainwright, I mean, the right to counsel in a criminal case. Well, shrink the universe down to where we are here today. The right to counsel in a civil case. Can't we take the next step? And we've had trouble with the Oklahoma Supreme Court recently, but about 20 years ago, they have a case that advanced the right to counsel in a civil case, unlike the United States Supreme Court. So I've researched all the cases. You heard from the speakers here today. The United States Supreme Court just won't go that far. They won't give us a constitutional right to counsel in a civil context. They can't quite get there. They go, if only if your freedom and liberty interest is at risk, can we get you counsel? It's a derivative of Gideon versus Wainwright, of course. But in a civil case, they can't quite get there. The United States Supreme Court, the Oklahoma Supreme Court has done a pretty good job of saying, come see us. That you can't get a constitutional right federally, but we do believe in a constitutional right here in the state of Oklahoma in some contexts. And I'm really grateful to our Supreme Court here. And I quoted from a case with Judge Hardy Summers. And he talked about the sanctity of the family and how you should always have a lawyer before you break up a family and try to deprive a parent of their parental rights. So in a way, the Oklahoma Supreme Court, God love them, is ahead of the United States Supreme Court as far as case law on the record for a civil Gideon. Civil counsel given to you by the state, just like you would in a criminal case, but it's rare. It's rare all over the country. Therefore, we got to step up and do it other ways. If you can't get the courts to do it, we got to do it ourselves. And that's what the Access to Justice Commission is all about, that you're so familiar with, that you've helped create.
You and I both, our stories are that we came from modest beginnings. And so I know that you have firsthand experience of folks who are in need of legal services that couldn't afford them, and you have a strong desire to make that happen. What do you think is the most important thing we need to be doing right now in Oklahoma?
I'm a big advocate on legal services. I'm a big advocate on legal aid. We're doing so many creative things, but as I said in my remarks today, my North Star is still legal aid. In every community in this country, we got to adequately fund legal aid, Legal Services of Oklahoma, legal aid. And they do such great work. But as you can see, we're getting more creative than just that. I mean, right here, your bar association has come up with a program called Oklahoma Free Legal Answers. Oklahoma Free Legal Answers. I give your current president of the Bar Association, Kimberly Hayes, a lot of credit. She's recruiting lawyers all over the state to give advice, to give answers to people within 24 hours in areas that they have expertise in. that if you don't have a lawyer, you can call and get help, legal advice. And we're trying to keep people from losing their homes on a foreclosure. We're trying to keep people from losing their apartment on an unfair eviction. We're trying to keep people from losing their car on a repossession. I mean, these are vital functions that we can perform for all these people that can't otherwise afford a lawyer, because most people agree, Derek Bach at Harvard said, there's far too much law for those who can afford it and far too little for those who can't. Meaning, John, that the top 10% have lawyers on retainer. The bottom 10% demographically of our country can turn perhaps to legal aid and public defenders. There's an 80% in the middle that still struggle to how to find lawyers, and a lot of them use what's called legal access plans. Like Legal Shield, one of our sponsors here today. You know, they help you find a lawyer if you're a police officer, firefighter, school teacher, that sort of thing. But what we're here to focus on today are the people in that bottom 10%. I call the folks on the downside of privilege. And they can get a lawyer criminally, but we got to make sure they can get a lawyer civilly. That's what the whole conference is all about. That's what the whole effort's all about. And we had Judge Lippman, one of the best leaders in the whole country, in here today to inspire us with all these new ideas. And we're believers here that new ideas create new realities. And Jim Sandman, he also spoke this morning. Two great speakers to give Oklahoma some ideas on what's going on all over the country and, frankly, all over the world.
Well, before we close up here, Mike, I just want to go back to some things you said about the Oklahoma Supreme Court and about the United States Supreme Court needing to find that there's liberty interests at stake before counsel being appointed, that being over on the criminal side. But here in Oklahoma, you talked about people losing their car. If you lose your car, what happens as a result of that here?
Well, what we got to realize is if people don't have a car, they can't get to work. If they can't get to a doctor, they can't they can't see their family. I mean, these are critical issues. We're trying to keep somebody in a car. I feel the same way about an apartment or a house. What's more important to the stability of a neighborhood, a country, a civilization, than people being in their home? And that's why I'm upset that Oklahoma City and Tulsa are high in the top 10 and 20 of eviction rates. You know, pushing people out of their apartments and their homes. We can do better. Now, get ready. We see that if they have lawyers, about 90% of the time they get to keep their apartment and keep their house. If they have a lawyer helping them, because they'll work out a pay plan. They'll work out some kind of resolution. You know, that's why we got to have lawyers to help people stay in their cars, stay in their homes, stay in their jobs. I mean, that makes it a better civilization. We're all in this thing together. I told him here today, there's givers and there's takers in this world. There's givers and there's takers. I've seen this in my life, givers and takers. The takers, well, they may eat better, but the givers, they sleep better. I mean, we're all here as givers today trying to help people that are on the downside of privilege keep their car, keep their house, keep their apartment, keep their job, keep their kids that somebody may try to take away from them unfairly. Hold that family unit together as much as possible. That's what this is all about. We're trying to help maintain a quality of life for these people that they deserve. I think it makes us a better city, a better state, and a better world. And I advanced a big idea here today. My mayor here has a new book out. He's talking about cities all over the country. And the mayor in Louisville proclaimed Louisville the city of compassion. I said, no, we're going to proclaim Oklahoma the state of compassion. I mean, for gosh sakes, through our efforts on access to justice, a state of compassion, a state of justice. And corporations are going to come from all over saying, now, why are you the state of compassion and the state of, well, let us tell you why. Because we adequately fund access to justice through legal aid and other creative ideas that we have here in Oklahoma.
Wow. You heard it here from former Attorney General, who actually is even talking about concepts of liberty on the civil side, about keeping people housed and families together.
Because new ideas create new realities, John. That's what this is all about. Are you with me?
I'm with you.
Okay.
Before we close here today, though, we got to let people know if they want to follow up with you, if they want to get in contact, how can they get hold of you?
Well, I do have a Turpentine Facebook page. Just go to a Turpentine Facebook page, and it'll tell you a little bit about my life philosophy of a funny bone, a backbone, and a wishbone. Now, a funny bone's a sense of humor, a backbone's a sense of courage, and a wishbone's a sense of idealism. So I can stop right there. Just go to my Facebook page. I also have a book that I'll send to people for free. I never sold a book in my life, but I did write a book. I give it away. It's called Turpentine. You know, don't be surprised. So I'll send anybody a book. It's got 50 life lessons in it, and it closes with Sandra Day O'Connor. My book closes with Sandra Day O'Connor. I asked her in an interview once, I said, what's the secret to happiness? And the great Supreme Court Judge Sandra Day O'Connor said 3 words: work that matters. Work that matters. Work that matters. Thank you, Sandra Day O'Connor, for giving all of us a pretty good life philosophy.
And there we have it today with former Attorney General Mike Turpin. we've reached the end of the road for today's episode. But I want to thank our guests for being with us today. We also want to thank our listeners. If you like what you heard today, rate us an Apple Podcast. We'll see you next time for another episode of On the Road with Legal Talk Network.
Thanks, John. Up top.
If you'd like more information about what you've heard today, please visit LegalTalkNetwork.com. Subscribe via iTunes and RSS. Find us on Twitter and Facebook, or download our free Legal Talk Network app in Google Play and iTunes. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.